let's go ahead and call the meeting to order. It's 10 o'clock. I've got a quorum, and I am going to talk through procedures on how, when we'll finish up. Do we have to push the button, or does it pick up?
You'll push the button, it'll turn green when you're ready to speak.
Okay, all right. I didn't print out the agenda, or I do, and it's somewhere, but it's coming, so I'm going to go off of memory. All right. Good morning. It's Friday, May 17th. This is the Personnel Board meeting. I'm calling to the meeting to order at 10:01. Just a quick roll call. Thank you. And we're gonna also introduce new members, kind of just in the same thing because we're new here for two people. So again, I'm Laura Dominic. I'm the chair of the committee. I have met all of you, I think, at some point, so you kind of know my background. So I'm going to turn off my mic and pass it to Arthur to introduce himself, please.
Turn on my mic?
Yeah, press the button. It should turn green. Touch and release. Did it turn green by your finger? Is it green by your finger? Oh, it's not even red.
There's a red
Yeah,
one.
try the red one. There you go.
My name's Arthur Freeland, and I was nominated by Bridget McCandless, and I have read what you sent me. I'm a retired family physician and live just up the street, so this was a great location for me.
Very good. Thank you. Carl? Is it red? Yeah.
My name is Carl Blair. I've been a resident of Independence, Missouri for over 20 years. I've been on this personnel board for 3 terms. And I'm an active person in my community. And
I don't know if they can hear you, Carl, since we're not, can you pull just closer to the phone? This is all a
Okay.
new system to us, so we're all learning a little bit about the AV.
my name is Carl Blair. I've been here in Independence for over 20 years. I've been on the personnel board for 3 terms, and I proud to be here, glad to be here, and be of service to my community and my fellow citizens of Independence. Love this city.
Thank you. We'll do Cindy, and then we'll come to staff.
Good morning. My name's Cindy Troutman. I've been a resident of Independence for close to 40 years. It's my pleasure to serve on this board and learn more about what we can do to help the city. And if you ever have any questions or if there's something I can do to help, let me know. Thank you.
Jamie Reemsmeyer, HR Director. I've been with the city for about, a little less than a year.
Close.
Happy to serve. Thank you.
I'm Jeremy Cover, and I'm the city attorney.
Jeremy, I'm glad to hear it's Cover because I never have understood that cover.
Yeah,
So it's Cover.
it's Cover, but I'm flexible.
Fair enough.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Carissa Smith, and I'm the HR business partner for the city.
All right. Just because we have new members, I forget this every time. Because we have new members, I'm just going to kind of just real briefly talk through kind of the procedures, how we handle the meeting, and then we'll actually get into it. So as we have topics that come up that management would like us to consider, they're brought to us in this form of a meeting. You'll get the documents 3 days in advance, as you did via email, so that you can study them, review them. Of course, as you're here longer, you'll understand more of what we're looking at and the questions that, that we consider. We will have a meeting here to discuss wording changes, to understand why the city is asking for the change, the impetus for the change, a little about the change. We'll discuss it. If we come to a conclusion in a meeting that the wording is as we would like it to be, then we will make a motion to vote to have it moved to a hearing. A hearing requires 10 days' notice. That notice is sent out to all employees and, of course, all of us on the board with all the documentation, so that at the hearing, anyone from the city who's employed by the city or affected by the policies, which I say because could affect a retiree, potentially, something like that, has a chance to come in and speak to anything they would like to regarding our deliberations. At the end of a hearing then, we decide to either move to a vote to recommend it for approval by city council. We may approve not to recommend it to city council, or we may say that we believe at this time we do not have enough information to make a decision and are asking for further clarification. Once something moves to the city council, of course, we are an advisory board to them, so then they will put it on an agenda, and it is their final decision as to whether or not it is adopted. That is their ultimate choice. I do say, and I know when I met the new people that we talked to before we brought them on board, we do operate as one board. So when we're on here, we of course have, we can discuss things. We may have differences on things. We may have a vote that is not unanimous on something. However, whatever the end decision of that vote is the vote that we walk out of here with as being supported by the personnel board, because we act as a body outside of here. It is also, unless asked to do, we, for instance, when I go in front of council to discuss something and it's a personnel thing, not something that we're looking at, I always say I'm speaking as the citizen, I'm not speaking as a member of the personnel board, because we do want to keep communication consolidated within the board and through proper channels. Also, just a real quick procedural type thing. I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Arthur and Cindy have not served on a board that is subject to the Sunshine Law. So just other than I'm not going to get into all of that. That's the Open Records Act in the state of Missouri. Not going to get into all of it except to say that please remember, do not reply all to messages unless it is to say, yes, I can be at the meeting. No, I would prefer we meet somewhere else, something like that. We never talk policy in emails because it can become a violation of the Sunshine Law. So if something goes out and you have a concern, you can always, of course, reply to Jamie or to the sender, or you can reply to Jamie and myself, or myself, but please don't reply to all, because we can get ourselves into a situation that we don't want to get locked into or become violation of a city law, or excuse me, of a state law, that is. Okay, very good. Are there any just general questions? I think it'll kind of help as we just start getting through items. You'll start to understand where we're working through. So, okay, so the first item on the actual agenda is for the approval of the November 21st, 2023 minutes. I would entertain a motion to accept those minutes.
Second.
Motion, okay.
Second.
Okay, I'll make the motion.
And I
Thank you for the second. Okay. Is there any discussion on the minutes? I realize that two of you were not here for that meeting. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to come to a quorum today of the people who were at the meeting. So unless Jeremy has any concern about us voting on the minutes.
You mean because two of the members weren't present at the meeting?
Right, and the two of us that were, and the third person is not here.
Right. No, technically, that's not an issue. So, I mean, and in this case, given that you wouldn't have a quorum without them, I would encourage them to vote.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
All right.
So point of order. If we vote for this, we're attesting to the accuracy of something that we have no independent knowledge of.
You're not necessarily attesting to the accuracy of it. You're just attesting to this is what the minutes say happened at that meeting, and you're approving the fact that that those minutes are being incorporated. Obviously, you weren't at the meeting, right? So you have no independent knowledge of what happened at that meeting, but approving the minutes is just essentially a formality. Technically, it's not actually required, but it's what puts them onto the record. And so it's just you all putting the minutes onto the record. It's not you saying, yes, I can 100% guarantee that everything said in those minutes is what happened at that meeting.
Very good. Thank you, Jeremy. I appreciate that. If there's no discussion on the minutes, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, motion passes. Okay, we are going to move on to old business. We are going to be looking at the first item there, which is the adoption of the plan, and that is on page 46, if you are following along, on paper or online. Now, I'm going to also mention that some of these items, if you read the minutes, we did move to have them taken to a hearing. Unfortunately, because of the time frame, we haven't had a hearing. We were onboarding new members. And so we are going to kind of go back through these things, especially since you're new. We're just going to discuss them. Some of these are pretty quick, easily understandable. Some I have noticed we still have some changes that need to be made. So we're kind of doing it a little different than we normally would. But this will help you to understand and get up to speed with what we're doing. So on this particular item, the change is to remove the phrase "and adopted by council," and we are speaking of the compensation plan. This is not the classification plan. This is the compensation plan. Bridget, would you mind opening the door? So,
I'm sorry, I'm not following where you are.
okay, I am on, if you have a copy
I
of.
do.
Okay, top of page 46, you'll need to look at the.
I get it, the page, I got it.
Yep, nope, you're totally fine, you're totally fine. Yeah, I think we could prop that open.
Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do.
Yeah, if they're gonna be vacuuming this stuff. Okay, so is everybody understanding what page we're on? Maybe getting these documents out will help. Okay, top of page 46. Again, I think this is one of those that is a pretty straightforward thing. This is the city's request here, and again, council will consider this. If they decide they're not in favor of it, they can make the decision. However, this is basically just to say that the city council does not have to approve the actual pay plan as defined in Article 5, Section A. Is there any discussion on this item? I'll give everybody a second to get to page top of 46 of what was just handed out.
37 of the handbook, 46 of the entire packet.
That's why it's confusing. So are you saying this one?
It should look like this.
If you look at the bottom right-hand corner, I believe that's what,
So you want to go by this?
it depends on what you're looking at, but
This right here. But that is not the same as the one, so is this the one you just received?
This is the one I just.
The top of the page says 37 of
Yes.
73.
the top of the page says 37 of 73. The bottom of the page says 50 of 86 of what you just received.
Okay, so the document that you printed for me at council is the top of page 46. What
It's
is-
because it's not the full packet that was provided.
Okay, so I'm going to rely on you to tell us what the pages are, because I don't have just the packet portion, I think is
Correct.
the issue. Okay, is everyone comfortable as to where we are on the document?
I am now, thank you.
Okay, good. Okay, very good, Carl. Okay, very good. Is there any discussion on this item? Hearing no discussion, I would make a motion for us to move this forward to a hearing. I'll entertain a second.
Second.
I have a second. Is there any further discussion on the item?
Was this requested by the council?
So this was actually proposed in an ordinance and approved by council at a meeting last year. Yes. You're welcome.
There's no further discussion. All in favor of moving this to a hearing, please say aye.
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 All right. Next item is on the termination policy, which for me is page 57. I'm not sure what it is on yours, so I will have Jamie put that out when, or someone when they find it.
It's 48 of 73, or page 61 of 86 in the entire packet.
Say that page again.
48 of 73 of the policy, 61 of 86 of the entire packet.
Okay. This item was discussed at the previous meeting, and we had discussed having changes made to it so that it would then be moved forward with suggested changes to a hearing, if I remember correctly. However, some of the changes that I have requested, as I read it the second time, have not been made. So I am going to, first of all, just kind of stop for a second and let Jamie just briefly explain the changes to this section, why these were requested.
To provide a bit more content to this particular part of the policy, it was a bit narrow in scope to allow for management and the HR team to take directive in terms of termination. So we provided a little more content to allow for individuals to be terminated within the organization. So we provided different aspects. If an employee needs to be separated from the organization, we still want them to include, of course, the HR department. That wasn't defined in the policy directly, so we wanted to outline that specifically. What we also wanted to do was to have the department director bring us the disciplinary action in writing. We wanted to review that disciplinary action, and we wanted to be able to take action accordingly immediately. But we also wanted to see if we needed to review it further. So we wanted to keep that, the 10-day suspension within the policy if necessary. And then we also wanted to be able to put the individual back into the work environment if that investigation after a suspension is not founded. And we also wanted to provide them with back pay as well, right? So we wanted to outline all of that. We also wanted to give the right to deny the request for termination as well. So we just wanted to outline all of those things within the policy to give a clear definition not only to the management, but we also wanted to show employees what our specific policy outlined in terms of termination. So that's what this is.
Very good. Okay, so I'm actually going to go, as I find things, kind of from my notes here, kind of line by line, so that we make sure that we have this recorded, so that we can make sure all the changes get made. So under section 1A, please make sure that classified employee is capitalized. That is a defined term both here and in, well, it's not defined here, it's defined in the definitions, so we need to make that happen if we could, please. If you notice under 1A, we have two items that the Human Resources Director can do. So deny the recommendation for termination. Then if you see the second item is place them on suspension without pay. So obviously, we're not going to do both of those things. We're either going to deny or we're going to suspend. So we should have an or clause there after the, can't tell if that's a period or a comma, an or there. Then under number 2, it says place the person on suspension without pay for a period of 10 days to conduct further investigation. Now, what becomes confusing to me is where it then says, under I, where it says a classified employee again should be capitalized, who has been recommended for termination shall be entitled to receive a written statement for the action. I personally am thinking that regardless of whether they're classified or not, they should receive a copy of the recommendation for termination. Is that different for classified? Do we need to say that here? And also, too, I will say, if you are, this point 2I should not just necessarily be under suspension, because if you have been recommended for termination, that should be up under paragraph A. Before you decide whether to accept the termination or suspend, they should get a copy of it regardless, correct?
Well, so there's two questions there.
Yep.
I'll answer the first one first.
Okay.
So the classified employee is in there specifically because that's the section that we're under, and we're only specifically speaking of classified employees.
Okay.
So that's why that's there.
Uh-huh.
Unclassified employees are spoken of in a different manner,
Yes.
in a different section. So that's why that's outlined specifically here.
Okay, and so let me just follow on that one then.
Of course.
So I agree, it should be here, but I think it should also be under unclassified. They should also
Or-
receive a copy of, right?
Well, we can do that, of course, or we can change it in a different manner. However you'd like to do, because we don't specifically speak of that otherwise. If you
Right,
look
which
under
are- yeah.
unclassified employees, with or without cause, terminate an unclassified employee in accordance with the provisions of Article 3.3 of the Charter. So if we do that, we're changing the context of how we terminate unclassified employees.
But giving a recommendation for, giving them a copy of the written statement would not be in violation of the charter, would it? If they're an unclassified employee, to tell them
No,
why?
absolutely not.
Okay, so my point is that under classified, we are saying if you're being recommended for termination, you'll get a written statement of reasons for the action. If we're going to specifically lay that out, which I think this happens anyway, you know what I mean? You're going to get a copy.
So the written memorandum is provided to the Human Resources Director for review by the department. It's not provided to the employee.
Okay, so go down to section 1A, 2I.
Right. 1A2I. Mm-hmm.
Classified employee who has been recommended for termination shall be entitled to receive a written statement of
Correct.
reasons for the action.
Yes,
Okay, so that section, first of all,
yes.
comes underneath suspension.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't come underneath termination. And if we're going to specifically state that a classified employee is allowed to get that, then I would assume an unclassified employee, we would also specifically state that under unclassified, that they would, of course, get a copy.
Not necessarily.
No.
Okay, so if I were an unclassified employee and I was being terminated, I would not be entitled to a copy of the reasons for my termination.
Correct.
Not according to the policy. That's the way it's written now. They're under different regulations according to the policy. So if we want to recommend changes to that, that's a different conversation based on how it's written currently.
Correct, and that's why I'm asking the question. So why would an unclassified, let me ask it this way, why would an unclassified employee not be entitled to receive a copy of a written reason why they're being terminated?
They're classified in a different way.
Okay, so they're classified in a different way. So say you're going to terminate the, I'm going to make up something that has nothing to do with anybody, obviously. You're going to terminate the police chief.
Mhm.
He's in the unclassified class. He's an unclassified employee. If he is terminated, he does not have an expectation that he can get a written reason for why he was terminated.
That's correct. Because as, can I go ahead? The employees that fall into those categories essentially, serve in, well, it depends on which position you're talking about. You're talking about department heads, okay? Those who, they essentially serve at the pleasure of the city manager. And the city manager doesn't have to, there could just be, this just isn't working anymore. It doesn't have to be here's all the things a list of here's the things you did wrong. And that's why, and so they're subject to they have a different set of policies that apply to them. They don't get the same benefits that you do with some of the classified employees, but they also are not necessarily entitled to, here's a list of the things that are wrong with this situation.
Okay, and I understand the concept of the will and at will.
Yeah,
and
they're
cause.
subject to at will, correct.
Right.
So
I would think that we would want to tell someone instead of saying, department head, you're just no longer serving,
So typically, and the way this is written as well, this is anybody's subject if they have, if they ask, or if an attorney asks, correct?
Right.
So, and the way this is written, it doesn't necessarily mean that they will get something. They will be provided, it says shall, right? So if they ask, they can,
okay,
okay?
okay.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that they're just going to be provided something. I know that it's semantics, but it's the way it's written, and that's
Because I would.
that's intentional.
Right. I would just hope that we are, that when I worked or consulted in HR is if you terminate someone, there is documentation of that.
There will be
and they
documentation.
should have-
There's
they
always
should
going to be
have access.
documentation,
They
for
should be,
sure.
have an expectation that they would receive a copy of that. But you're saying, in this case, because of the at-will, they are not.
So
entitled to that.
all employees in Missouri are at will, as you know.
Sorry, yes, I
Even
should say that.
even as classified employees, they're at will.
Okay.
Okay. So regardless of if they're will or if they are classified or unclassified, they're at will employees. So
Okay.
that doesn't that is not the intent of the writing of the policy. What this says is, as a classified employee at the City of Independence, you shall be provided a copy should you ask, or should someone on your behalf ask, say an attorney, not anyone, but an attorney. Let's just go there. What this is saying is, as an unclassified employee, you're in a different class. So this doesn't apply to you because you are at the mercy, right, of the city manager.
Okay.
That it's written that way. It was written that way. We can take it out. We don't have to. It's up to us, right, to make that policy change. But it is different for a reason. And again, we have the authority to make that change if we want. That is the why behind it. Regardless, however, at will still means at will.
Right.
And we
And I
have the
apologize,
right
I
as
can-
the employer to do what we want. Sans, of course, our represented employees.
Right. And I apologize for making that
Nope,
confusion.
you're fine. No problem at all.
I'd like-
I would like to ask a question. So when you terminate a unclassified employee,
Yes, ma'am.
they get a termination letter?
They'll get a notification, but they don't necessarily get a letter, no.
Okay. And when you say notification, let me understand that.
So they're notified in an email,
Okay,
right, that they have a separation, and then we provide them information about exit, right? So that's just providing them, here's your
Benefits.
last day, here's your benefits, all that. So,
Okay.
and that's every employee that exits from the city. It's not just unclassified. So it does finalize employment in some way. It's that way for every single employee with the city, just so that we have a finalizing document.
okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am?
Okay, so I will move on from that point if you feel comfortable that we have what we need on that particular piece of it. But I would like to recommend that we move 1A, 2I to up, because if, that should not just be in the case of a suspension. That should be moved up to, you have been recommended for termination.
Okay.
We're gonna make a decision, but in the meantime, you're gonna get an explanation of that, correct?
That explanation ultimately will happen after, but we can provide them with an explanation before if that's the intent. Where would you like to move that? Under A?
Well, hang on just a moment, because it's in there twice. It's not only in there as section I and subsection I and subsection II. The next paragraph that's not struck through contains both those concepts and would appear to be after the suspension is over.
Right.
So I'm not sure you need I or II with the paragraph that's below them,
Well,
that starts a classified employee.
and I understand your point. Let's if we can, because let's stick with just if we can. I'm not trying to, say we can't, but let's try to stick with that one section as to where it needs to go, because then I have questions on 2, 3, and 4 as well.
Okay.
So if we could just focus on that subsection I, that applies to anybody who's been recommended for termination before you make the decision of whether you're gonna do 1 or 2. So up, you know what I mean? Up under A somewhere. Does my point make sense?
That we provide them a notification that they're on suspension?
No, it says a classified employee who has been recommended for termination shall be entitled to receive a written copy of reasons for action. That is recommended for termination. So if you've been recommended for termination under A,
Mm-hmm.
then that's when you should receive the notification, according to, if you're gonna use that words.
But if they're, okay, I,
I think she was about to say, what if they are then denied?
exactly, because that
Well,
then is going to create a problem for said employee if they're not going to be, and that would then create problems from a morale and a team perspective that I wouldn't necessarily want to create.
So just for clarification, what you're saying is somebody can recommend somebody for termination. You can deny it. And it may be something where it's really the supervisor needs to
Coach or.
coach or
or it's a
mentor.
Correct.
Or you may have a new supervisor there that needs a little push to understand you can't, no, and I shouldn't say the word can't, but that there's no reason to terminate that person. See what I'm saying?
Yes,
So
ma'am.
I agree with you that it should be after, because it's like you said, it'll affect morale. And that person may never know that they were up for termination.
Correct.
Because it may have been more so the supervisor coaching. That's, I
Right, if it's or if it's superfluous, like.
That's my
some of it-
concern.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
So.
I would
then-
leave it where it is.
Yes,
That
ma'am.
would be my
Okay.
recommendation.
But if we leave it under suspension, so you're saying, okay, someone sends you the letter, the department head sends you the letter, we want to terminate Jim Smith, right?
Yes.
And you say, one, no, we're not doing this, you need to go a different direction. Nobody needs to know this happened?
Or we're going in a different direction, you need to coach whatever we're gonna do. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Mhm.
okay. So then, so that happens, done deal. That goes that direction. Or you choose two,
Mhm.
you're gonna suspend them. So now you're gonna say to Jim Smith, you have been recommended for termination in a written statement.
Yes, we're gonna say you've been recommended, we're going to investigate this situation. Here's a notification that you're on suspension and the investigation's happening, there's no outcome yet,
Okay,
right? Here's notification of said investigation, there is no outcome. Let's make that very clear.
okay,
However, you are on a 10-day suspension. Pending notification, we'll get back to you in 10 days.
okay. Understood. So so then, and I'm jumping ahead and coming back. I know. So you're gonna either deny it, we understand, right? You're going to
Correct.
suspend, put them on suspension, we're investigating. Or should it be, choices three is we're gonna terminate you.
Mhm.
Right?
Correct.
So we really should have 1, 2, and 3,
Why is there an or between 1 and 2?
because she's not going to deny the termination and suspend the person.
Why not?
Well, if you're gonna well, then we need to word it such that if you're gonna deny the termination, you're gonna go back and say, department head, you need to do something else, you need to whatever,
Mhm.
then they're not on suspension, right?
It could be. Denying the, to me, sorry, denying the termination and placing them on suspension you could do both of those. I mean, those are not mutually exclusive. Right?
I mean, I understand what you're saying. I'm thinking of it from the employee standpoint, okay? I come here, I read this, right?
Mhm.
HR's received this. Of course, I'm not gonna know if it's denied. But if it's denied, you're saying it's going to be taken back, but you're not going to necessarily put them on suspension. But you could.
Mhm.
So then maybe do we also have to say the HR person could put you on a PIP, could,
I don't think we need to go into that because we have a disciplinary section as well.
okay, I find it confusing to read. I would think you're gonna make a choice. You're gonna deny it and go back and rediscuss things, which and then maybe it comes back to you in a different way and you move forward. Or you're gonna suspend the person because we need more time. We're gonna pay them for that. We're gonna let them know. Or 3, you're gonna say, yeah, we need to terminate them. I agree with you, department head, move forward. Yep. I feel like I'm not getting my point across. Am I not?
I understand both sides, and that's for you all to discuss.
Well, I think,
I know what direction I would take in terms of the logistics of a situation, so either way, I can handle the maneuvering the and or not at all. So
Why couldn't
I'm
you
good with
put,
it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No,
but
you're
After
fine.
one, why couldn't you put
And or
And this could happen,
Or-
or we
Yeah.
deny it.
that works
I'm fine
to
with
me.
Yeah.
And then we move that I-5?
Yeah,
We move that
that
to
should be three.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, that helps me at least to
Yeah,
understand
move that
that.
up.
Right, so you move that to number 3. You have,
Fine by me.
and then, so you're gonna say deny the recommendation and/or suspend, but then it's not gonna be and/or terminate.
Correct.
So you gotta figure out how you want,
How about we put or after number 2?
yeah, that's fine with me.
Yeah, so it would be 1, deny, and or suspend, or terminate.
Right,
Yeah.
And then change 5 to number 3.
yes.
I think that works.
Yeah, does that make more sense about what I'm trying to
It
get
makes more
across?
sense to me.
Okay.
I know we've been bouncing around, I kept waiting to try to kind of, but I was afraid we were gonna get too far along, and I wasn't
Right.
gonna miss my opportunity.
Yeah,
So, yeah, that makes sense, I just didn't think it should be, just be a straight or
okay.
there, so.
There, okay, that makes great sense to me then. Okay, so we're good with the little I. Little 2 is in there because we're referencing the standards of the merit system, which is defined here in the definitions. But termination shall be in accordance, termination under the suspension is strange to me.
It was due to the fact of the investigation piece.
Okay,
That's why it's under there, but I see why that is an issue
Right.
for you. We could put it under termination. That's perfectly acceptable to me if that's what the board would prefer.
thoughts?
Why don't you put the terminate the employee for cause, why don't you put that under as a 3? Just a whole, like 1, 2, 3.
Right.
That is going to happen.
Yeah.
As a 3 with parentheses, okay, so,
It's the little 2 that we're talking about. Should the little 2 be moved? Moved, period. I'll say what.
And I'll go back to what I told you a minute ago. I and II are in the first paragraph that's not read,
so then maybe.
and that comes after termination.
Yeah.
Those principles are already there. All we have to do is figure out
Where does
a
it,
reinstatement.
where does it reference the merit system? In what section are
Okay,
you?
do you see below the I, and IV? There is a struck through number 1, the paragraph immediately below
Oh,
the struck
okay,
through
next page,
paragraph.
gotcha. Now I understand. Yep.
That's the same principles that are the I and II.
Okay,
And
yes.
it's after termination. It's not after suspension.
And I apologize then for interrupting you because that
That's
makes,
all right.
makes sense. We have it, it's duplicative. So is it good that we just let 1 and 2, as you indicated, stay where they are in the next paragraph in black?
It's my suggestion.
Okay. Are
And
we
then you have to
following
figure
that?
out where to put the reinstatement compensation, possibly at the same point, because it's after the rest of the process. That's the III subsection.
Is the III, the reinstatement part,
Mhm.
it is not covered in that black paragraph that we're talking about?
It is not. I found it
Okay.
important to put that in the policy because I found it important for our employees to understand they would be fully compensated if they were not found to be terminated in the investigation.
Okay,
That it would would be appropriate anywhere after the 1 and/or 2 and/or 3.
Right, because maybe you're terminated and then which you be subsequently reinstated if, but once you're terminated, you're not off without pay. You're off, done, no pay.
Correct. Yes. Now,
So,
if there's an appeal to a termination, that's going to be defined in the appeal. So that,
which is that second black paragraph.
correct. So that's a different process altogether that we wouldn't want to necessarily define here.
So I would say in that situation, I'm comfortable leaving the little 3 under the number 2,
Mhm.
which is a suspension.
Okay.
I
For
agree.
clarification,
I agree.
to provide them with a written statement for reasons of the action of the suspension is just a bit different than providing them with a written statement for the reason of termination. So those could be defined a bit differently, and that might be why there's one under the suspension piece as well as one under
Well, I
the,
assumed, excuse me, that,
No, you're fine.
that the little I
Mhm.
was not, it says for termination. It doesn't say for suspension.
correct, it does. So if we want to keep it in there is what I was referring to. If we want to keep it in there for reason for suspension, we could change that word, if that's what the board wants to do, is all I was saying.
So you're suggesting changing it to, which I think I agree, a classified employee who has been recommended for suspension shall be entitled to a written statement for that action.
But,
Up to you.
but it goes back to that, and the fact of the matter is, it's under termination. B is termination. So I think.
Oh, you're
that-
saying the whole section.
The whole section is. So I think if you say to someone, suspension, then they're thinking, oh, I did something bad, I'm being suspended. Whereas you say recommended for termination is a total different term. I would leave it, but that's my thought.
I understand your point now. You're looking at the grand scheme of things. You're
Yeah.
looking at a
B.
paragraph that talks about termination.
Yeah.
As opposed to,
Suspension. I'm an employee, I go to my employee manual, I go to B, it's termination. This is what I can expect because I may be terminated, blah, 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 blah.
So you're prepared to notify a person who is under investigation the reason for the investigation?
I would prefer not, but this is up to you.
Well, I think if we leave it under suspension, that's what we're doing. The day the employee is suspended, that says we will tell them why, if it's under suspension.
It's not customary, right?
Yeah.
That's not typical, simply because it's an investigation, that's the term of investigation, and it could be unfounded. But that's up to
okay,
you.
okay, I'm in the forest and trees whole thing now that I can't get back from.
To make it cleaner.
Okay.
Let's just call it what it is. To make
Okay.
it cleaner, it would be best to remove 1 and 2, in my opinion.
That one parentheses you're talking about, not,
The I and the II.
The I and the II.
oh, okay.
Because at the end of the day, they're either going to be reinstated with pay, or they're going to be terminated and they'll have the
told what?
right to receive notification of the reason for termination.
So I'm sorry, but just for clarification, you suspend someone, they do not necessarily know why they're suspended?
If we remove that.
Okay.
I think that if I were an employee and HR came to me and said, you are suspended with pay,
Without.
okay, even more so. If I'm suspended without pay, I would expect a written reason why I'm being suspended without pay. I mean, you're obviously not going to not tell them, because you can't just say, okay, Jim Smith, you are not showing up to work tomorrow because we're investigating something related to you, and you're not gonna come in for 10 days, and you're not gonna get paid for 10 days, or whatever the time frame is. I mean, obviously you have to explain to them, right? Why they're being put on suspension.
That investigation notification is going to be very, very benign.
Meaning, I understand what benign means, but give me an example.
you are on 10-day suspension based pending an investigation. That's it.
So if you, so I'm doing my job, you come, you call me into the office or whatever the department head does and says, Laura Dominic, you are suspended without pay pending an investigation.
Correct.
I'm gonna be like, what for?
Exactly. Because if it's unfounded, that documentation is moot, and there's no reason for that documentation.
I understand that, but if you're not going to explain to someone why they're not getting paid for 10 days, I don't understand how you cannot tell somebody that. I think the morale would be very, I mean, if I walked out of my department head's office and they said, you're on suspension without pay for 10 days pending an investigation, and you don't tell me why,
I understand that's concerning, but that's typical.
Right.
It's very typical.
okay,
It's very, very typical.
okay, then, okay, so.
So that's why I'm saying it may be best not to provide it because that's all they're going to receive. But we can, if that's what the board chooses, but that is what they'll receive.
So there's a couple reasons why you don't. One is because it may be moot, may not be. And the other may be, if it involved someone, you don't want them going to that person or other people and saying, oh, got to have my back. You see what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah,
So, and I
definitely.
think most people who get suspended for 10 days without pay probably know if they did something. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't provide
It's
it.
going to be understood.
Yeah.
And the organization's big enough, but small enough, and the teams are small enough where if it's that egregious and to a level where it has to be investigated, it will be known.
Okay. I mean, I'm gonna go with you on that. So tell me, walk me through again what this is gonna now look like.
That's okay.
Because I am totally lost.
That's
now.
okay. It's no problem. So if we were to keep this I believe we've taken I out. If we were to keep I, we would change the word termination to suspension, and we would just simply know that documentation would be extremely vague. If we want to, however, we can simply take it out and just be aware that an individual who's on suspension is just going to be on suspension. And if it's determined that they're terminated, they have the right to request a written documentation upon termination. Obviously, they will have documentation in file.
And you will put it, you obviously would put it in writing if they were suspended, pending, like,
Any documentation on any of this is going to be in file,
Yeah.
regardless.
okay. So if we kept I, we would say a customer who has been recommended for, or
Suspension.
is being suspended, not even recommended for suspension. You are being put on suspension, right? You've been recommended for termination, but we're putting you on suspension, right?
Mhm.
So a classified employee who has been suspended without pay shall be entitled to receive a written statement of, then we have to address reasons for the action. Because if we're not going to include reasons for the action, we don't want to say that here. If we're just going to say pending investigation, like you said, that one sentence, right?
Yeah, I mean, reason, however,
Which is kind of like you're suggesting, just if we take it out. Then we avoid all this rewording.
however the board wants to do it, we'll do it, if we want to keep it in. Otherwise, we can take it out and not worry about the wording.
If my feeling is, well, I'm going to ask the group, if this is not a vote, just what is your thoughts? Would you keep I and reword it, or would you take it out?
I think it'd be difficult to work with it. I'd take it out.
You'd vote out, okay. I mean, I'm not taking a vote, but you would say out. Carl, what are your thoughts?
I delete it.
I concur. I would delete it.
Okay, recommendation then is we will delete little I, right? we're keeping little 2, right?
Yes.
But it is also mentioned over here in the paragraph in black. So
So we keep it down there?
keep it in the black.
As long as it's in here somewhere, I think
Yeah.
we're
Okay.
good. And,
Okay.
and it should be after termination.
Agreed.
It's not something you do before termination.
Okay. I would then, if we're concurring, we will scratch out little 2. And then keeping in little 3, I think we agree is fine, right? For people who come and say, well, wait a minute, what happens? It's like, no, right here, you're gonna get, if you're reinstated, we'll pay you.
Yeah.
So the only thing that would change to 3 is just the capitalization of classified and employees.
And I would move it down with the paragraph that's after the entire set of options.
And I would personally recommend to keep it under the
Suspension?
suspension.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would too. I would keep it under suspension.
Okay. Carl, any thoughts on little 3? Okay. Okay, so little I, little 2, gone. Only one.
I would suggest the wording if reinstated instead of reinstatement. If reinstated, comma, classified employees shall be compensated.
And I like that rewording too. It seems a little
Clearer.
clearer. Yeah. Yep. So then we're going to do a little reword there. Okay. Okay, so before we move on to unclassified, which is a lot easier because basically there's one sentence and we're done. Is there anything else under classified employees that we have any concern with? All right, hearing none. Is there anything, so just give a little talk on unclassified employees. We used to have this in here basically saying that because you could be with or without cause, we may offer you basically a what's the word I'm looking for? A payout,
So,
severance package.
didn't find it appropriate if somebody was terminated for cause to give them a severance, essentially. Not necessarily customary, and just didn't find it appropriate to be putting that in policy as a requirement. So found it appropriate to take that out.
So is there's, because we're taking it out, and I understand your comment, I want to understand, then does that mean because it's not there, you can't consider it if you wanted to?
Oh, no, it can be
It's okay.
considered. of
Okay,
course.
okay, I just want to, like, you're not just scrubbing this and saying, absolutely never, across the board, never gonna do it, because we've rejected.
All
It's
this
always
says is it's required, since it's in policy, it's pretty much required for unclassified employees based on tenure.
Right, yeah.
Mhm.
Right, okay. So I'm fine with taking that out. Obviously, we need to capitalize unclassified employee. So does this apply to an unclassified employee? All unclassified employees?
Yes.
Like, because some have, like, say the city manager has a contract with the city,
So the
right?
contract would supersede any policy.
Okay, and and that's covered somewhere, we know that, right?
Yes,
Just like we say represented.
correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure of that, because I was trying to think of all the different classification of people in the unclassified employee, because some would have contracts and some would not. Okay,
Yes, ma'am.
okay, very good. So then, other than just the capitalization there of unclassified employee, under that, is there any other concern with that section? Okay. So now, based on our discussion, this is where I think we've had good discussion. We've decided what we want the wording to be changed to. We now say, we have the option to say either, yes, we want you to come back and show us that language, which I don't think we do. I think now we're really getting down to brass tacks. We'll get it changed. We can go ahead and say that we can vote now if we want to move it to a hearing with the recommended changes. So then what would happen is, Of course, at the 10-day, by the 10-day notice, we would get it. If we happen to see something that we didn't capture in our discussion, we still have the ability to, you know, say, oh, remember we were gonna put an or there or something like that at that hearing time. Okay? Okay, so in which case then, I would make a motion for us to move the reference sections that we have changed in, according to the agenda, for a hearing. Is there a second?
I second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Okay. We are down to holidays. For me, that is on.
Page 17 of 73, maybe?
Thank you.
Thank you. 26 for mine. Okay.
Say, tell me the page again.
At the top, it says 17 of 73.
Thank you.
Since there was more than one printing, I'm not sure what the bottom's going to say.
Okay. Page number from you.
17 of 73.
Or 30 of 86.
Or 26 of 82.
Take your pick.
Or the old one, which is 13 of 67, so here we are. Okay, so, again, let's just do this general, since they're new, just a general explanation of why we're making suggested changes.
Sure, so we needed to clean up the language once again to identify the provisions of holidays. And since we have many different schedules throughout the city with our employees, we wanted to make sure that all who work flexible schedules, who work 410s, who work 12s, all of those are covered, and all who receive holiday pay are paid across the board consistently. We're cleaning this up not only on within this policy, but also in all of our CBAs. And so this is just making that consistency across the board. In this language, we're asking to be put, like I said, in all of our various policies throughout the organization.
Okay. So the first, so C1, where there's a lot of red there, that is part that's been cleaned up below. So I think we're good with that stuff coming out because we're kind of redefining it below. The paragraph says when a designated holiday falls on a Sunday, Monday will be, falls on Saturday, Friday will be. I believe holiday is in definition, disregarded is not, so we're not concerned about capitalization there. Next paragraph, I have a couple of questions on. Okay, so full-time employees shall receive 8 hours of pay at their straight time for each holiday regardless of their work schedule. So if you are a 410 person, Friday is a holiday,
Yes.
you've already worked 4 10-hour days, and you are going to get, just in the first sentence, you're going to get 8 hours pay for that Friday. So you will get paid 48 hours. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. That's the intention and the want, because that then bumps them into overtime, correct?
Well, they flex their, well, I said that wrong. They flex that week based on the hours worked. So I'm going to use my team as an example.
Okay.
I have a few individuals who work 410s.
Okay.
Okay. So those individuals within that week will flex their schedule around that holiday. So they'll work
32 hours. in
32
4
hours within that week. Right.
Do they have to do that? If they say, no, I don't want to do that. I'm going to work my 410s and I want you to pay 8 on Friday.
Not usually, no.
Okay. Is that stated? Should that be stated or not?
I mean, they can. It's up to it's discretionary in the organization if they have the budget for it. But if they work those hours and they have the time to work that, or if they need that within the organization, they can. My team is all salary, so it's different, right?
Right.
For my team, but if those hours are utilized from hourly employees and the department has it and they're scheduled that way, they can. And they've done that in various organizations.
So when you
since
say organizations, that's at
The
the
department
department
level.
level.
Mhm.
And then that would be covered by department policy, not by personnel policies and procedures.
Correct. Department scheduling, yes.
So my question is, do you pay overtime based on the day or the week?
It depends again.
On the department?
It depends on it depends on the CBA.
Okay.
Yes.
Depends on the
But if
CBA,
there's
depends
no-
on the exam.
If there's no restriction by CBA, then it's just based on FLSA standard, which is weak, obviously.
Okay, so
Does
that was my.
clarify,
yep.
board member? Does that clarify?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
absolutely, yeah.
So that was my question on the first sentence, just to make sure that
Mhm.
we understand that somebody might end up working 48 if their department allows, and that that department head makes that decision based on their budget and their needs and that.
Correct.
Okay, make sure I'm on, making sense, okay. Any employee who does not receive 40 hours of straight time pay in a holiday week due to only receiving 8 hours holiday pay shall have the option to make up hours worked during that pay period or use accrued leave if they so choose to cover any additional hours. So explain, just kind of explain that. How that, give me an example of how that, where that comes in.
So if they were to take a day off within that week of holiday,
Okay,
and that does, they'd have to shore that up with their time off.
okay.
Those hours not worked. Does that make sense?
Do not receive. Is that clear to everyone else and I'm stumbling? So say, for instance, this is a person who works a 4-10. Friday's the holiday, and they're only gonna get 8 for that. But they didn't work on Thursday.
Right?
So presumably they're taking Thursday off either with their vacation time or their, I don't know, personal leave time. I don't remember all the
Correct. Yes.
classifications.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I guess kind of my question is, and I don't know if I'm just not thinking of it right. Do we need to say that? Because it's accrued leave, so it's not like, okay, Laura, yeah, we know you want a 40-hour week, you want to take off Thursday, but you don't have any accrued leave, so you're not going to get paid for that day.
Well, they'd get paid for the holiday.
Right.
Yes.
Do we need to say that they can? If you think we need to say that they can get to 40 hours by either working a little more, right? Like say it says, so the option to make up hours worked during that pay period. So they take off Thursday, but they don't have accrued leave. So they're like, okay, but please let me work an extra 10 hours some other time in the pay period so I can make up for that. Is that what we're saying? I don't know if I'm confused or overreading.
Yeah, I think we might just be
Okay.
overreading it
Okay.
because, and there's regulations FLSA wise that restricts them from doing that in a pay period necessarily, especially in our fire department. The way that they have their hours and the way that they do their scheduling. So if we were to put that in policy for, and I know that they're governed by CBA, but there's certain things that we can't do. So I'm afraid if we were to restrict that in policy, it might make it a little, or it would hamstring us as the employer.
Okay, if
That concerns me a bit, but I would defer to the board to, if we need to clarify it in a different way.
It's not very clear.
Okay.
How about the opposite situation? Somebody who works 4-10s normally,
Uh-huh.
Monday through Thursday,
Okay.
and Monday's a holiday.
Okay.
So at the end of the week, they have 38 hours. Do they work up the extra 2 at some point, or
Not typically. They would have to make up that hour, or it would wash out at certain points in time over the years, or over the year, because of the way that the holidays work out.
But they could, by this policy, they
They
have the
could
option to
take
work 2
their,
hours.
correct.
So they could say, okay, like you said, Monday's a holiday, so I only got 8. Like, and then we're not talking about they work the holiday. We're talking about they're not on
Mhm.
Monday. I work my 3/10s. I'm at 38 hours. So on Friday, which would normally be my day off, I'm
Mhm.
going to work 2 hours because I have that option to get myself to 40.
Yeah.
So it's optional.
It's optional.
Not necessarily that it happens,
Right.
but it is optional.
But the benefit that they take in lieu of that problem is the 410s, the flexibility of schedule, right? So it's that transition of benefit here.
Right. They may not want to do it because they're like, I have to be off on Fridays because that's when my child needs childcare. So
Correct.
I'm not going to make up the 2 hours.
Correct,
Um,
right? And that only happens every once in a while with the way the holiday schedule is and things like that. That's also why we provide the personal holiday, that they can utilize those hours for those types of things. That's essentially why that time is provided. That's also for our exempt individuals, why we provide that exempt leave. You know, these things are provided for situations just like this, but that flexible schedule is definitely the benefit to those employees for that reason. And it also isn't everybody's schedule. Again, just trying to,
That's explained well.
Yeah.
I just wanted it in an example.
no problem at all. No, absolutely no problem at all.
Okay, so one last question. I think we've straightened ourselves out on it, that it's good.
Okay.
On the second to the bottom where we use the phrase, due to receiving 8 hours holiday pay. Holiday pay.
I'm sorry, I'm lost on where you're.
Okay, so C1, then the list of the holidays. Then we talked about the Sunday, Monday paragraph, right? See that paragraph?
I was on the wrong.
I know,
page.
there's,
I apologize.
I know, there's so many pages.
C1, okay.
Yeah, so we'll go down, we did the paragraph when a Sunday
Mm-hmm.
falls on a Sunday, Monday. Not that paragraph, I'm good with that. We're talking about that next paragraph. In the second sentence,
Okay.
it says, due to only receiving 8 hours holiday pay, what is the definition of holiday pay?
Holiday pay is defined by the holidays that are listed above.
But holiday
Holidays.
pay to me is when, like, as employee.
It's straight time. It's
Okay.
defined.
And where's that defined?
The
Oh,
first
straight
line of that
time
paragraph.
for each. Okay, an employee who does not receive. Okay. This is the reason I'm asking the question. As an employee doesn't know anything about HR, you know what I mean, and reads this and says, what does holiday pay mean? Oftentimes, holiday pay to most people means time and a half, or time and a something, or whatever. Do we need, is that holiday pay, is that confusing only to me?
It says here, full-time employees shall receive 8 hours of pay at their straight time rate for each holiday, regardless of their regular work schedule.
Mm-hmm. The next sentence says, an employee who does not receive 40 hours of straight time pay in a holiday week due only receiving 8 hours holiday pay. Does it make sense, or am I, again, is it overthinking to say it's 8 hours of pay due to the holiday? Does holiday pay in itself need to be defined?
I think we've defined it above where it says,
Okay,
I think where it says straight time. I think we're fine.
okay, because then the next thing we're gonna move to is when they work a holiday,
Uh-huh.
and that's gonna be another topic about holiday pay, and that's
Okay.
different. Okay, so that's why I kind of brought that up. So are we comfortable there? Yeah, Carl?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So then we go down to number 4, employees required to work on holidays. me go to this, because this is where I made the notes the first time. Okay, so my note on this was, it was previously, I just made a note that this had changed, because
It did.
it changed. Okay, so we're now saying employees required to work on a holiday shall be paid 8 hours holiday pay at the straight time rate.
Mhm.
So, okay, so if I work that day, I'm gonna get 8 hours straight pay.
If you don't work that day, you'll get 8 hours.
But we're under the paragraph required to
You
work.
get it if you work or not. You get 8 hours straight time.
So I work that Friday and I get 8 hours. Then
Yes.
additionally, all hours worked on a holiday by an employee will be paid at 1.5 times the straight rate. So when I see in addition, that
Yep.
says plus sign to me.
Correct.
Okay, so plus.
You get to make a lot of money if you
Okay.
work on the holidays.
Okay, so I will get 1.5 times those are the same 8 hours, right?
Yep.
So you're gonna make
You're gonna make a lot of money.
2.5.
2.5. That's
Yep.
the intention?
That's the intention.
Okay, I just wanna make sure because that's the way I read it.
That's
I-
the way it's
I-
written and
I'm
that's
a
the
little
way it's intended.
I'm really surprised because I don't normally,
See that?
yeah.
That's
And
what,
especially
that's
with the
what we've
city.
agreed upon
Okay.
as administration.
Okay, so that's clear. Is that clear to others then?
Yes, yes.
Okay. All right, thank you for the walkthrough on that.
Sure.
Okay, so, I would make a motion to move the changes that we have discussed under holidays to a hearing. Can I get a second?
I second that.
Is there any further discussion?
No changes today, just these changes that we see in front of us.
Is that what we landed on? At some point I get so.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So as written, or as provided. Okay, all right. All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, holidays. Okay, extension of probationary period.
Page 11 of 73 or 24 of 86.
Okay, 19 of 82 for me. This is why we need to meet more often. I can't keep track anymore, all the changes. Okay, one more second. Appraisal. Okay, probation. Okay. Working tester, appointed. Okay, so in the first paragraph, well, should I let you give a quick explanation? I apologize.
I mean, my explanation's kind of in the comments section next to it. Essentially, wanted to take out the kind of the corner that's been put here, put everyone in. If somebody is absent, you know, we need to take every circumstance as one does in HR on its own and see what's going on as opposed to putting that in policy, right? So we need to make sure that we're looking at the situation as it is and looking at probationary periods on the merit and seeing what's going on as opposed to putting it in policy. And so it was the expectation to remove this and see exactly what's going on in every situation, not looking at just somebody who's absent and extending accordingly, because if they're absent for cause, that's one thing. But if they're absent because they're absent, we probably don't want to extend their probationary period.
Yeah, I think the paragraph was probably there for the major extenuating situations where
Right.
it was continuous absence, not
Right.
sporadic
Agreed.
absence. But I did read your comment, and I could not find anything in D1A
I
that,
think it's D2A. I noticed
Okay.
the same. I think it should have been written as D2A in the comment.
Oh, my apologies.
Because I read that too, and I'm like, I don't think we're not referring to back to D1 duration. We're referring to,
okay, that fixes it. Thanks.
is that, I think that's the intention.
I wrote this back in September of last year, so let me review my note.
Well, it should have been easier to find just the paragraph right above the one we're considering.
Yep.
You see where the confusion?
Yeah, I got it.
And I think that's what you mean. I mean, and the comment's obviously going to go away. That's not part of the approval, just to make sure.
Yep, that is what I meant.
Okay, so that helps to understand that. Okay, so then let's just go back through, and I did not rewrite my notes from the previous time, so I don't know if some of these have been changed, but I'm gonna go quickly through them. So, obviously, we've changed his or her to there. Then also in that sentence, it says, he or she, so that should be they and have, instead of he, she, has, correct? Then that last sentence there of the first paragraph, it says, all classified employees. We don't define classified employees. We say all employees in the classified service. Classified service is defined in Article 9.
Where are you, Laura?
I'm under, am I correct? I'm on the very first paragraph of D. I apologize. I jumped from the particular section back to the top, because if we're going to make changes in this section, we need to,
So you're at the very beginning, D, probation?
yeah. And
Okay.
maybe at this point, let me rethink my thought on this. Let's stick with just the 2B that you're asking us to consider, because Jamie and I are going to work on some other wording type things that are not substantial to the discussion, like whether you say classified employee or employee in the classified service. So let me retract that. Let's stick with just the paragraph D2B being excluded. Is there any concern with just that now that I've, okay. All right. Carl, good? Okay, very good. I would make a motion to move that particular change to a hearing. Can I get a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye? All right. Taken through. Okay. Employee performance approvals.
This
It's
is
just the very
page.
next page.
Thank you. Man, that's the easiest one we've had yet.
What page? Okay. I got that.
12 of 73,
Okay.
or 25 of 86.
Okay.
Appraisals?
Yes. Yeah, E, section E, yeah. Okay, so what you're recommending is we're adding a little more for public safety sector.
What we're doing here is adding content to identify what the performance appraisals are to be with regard to the services, yes. It wasn't identified earlier, so we're just outlining what it should be for all to understand. Trying to make it more clear for our employees.
So we have 2 probationary, 2 promotional, 2 probationary, 2 promotional under 6. Then under 9 months, that is only public service. And then 1 year is only public service. Okay, and is public service defined? I gotta get to my definitions list. Okay, we use the phrase public safety employee. I do not see a definition of public service. Is that defined somewhere else in the document that we don't have to either add a definition or change it to public safety employee? Is my question clear?
It is, I'm thinking.
Nope, that's fine. Because if I'm not clear, just say, no. Nor I don't think it is general service. That's not a, oh, no, it's general service employee.
We should probably change that.
Okay, to match the definitional.
Mhm.
Okay. Does everyone understand what we're saying there?
And is that then going to be public safety employee?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait till Cindy comes back. Is there any other thoughts on that particular? That's all I had in that particular section that we're talking about, was just where we define those. And if we change those to employee in the, or change it to, what is it? Yeah, public safety, probationary, public safety, promotional. So just changing the word service to safety. And then general would be changing nothing, because we do say general service employee. Okay. We're just changing the word service to safety under the ones that say public.
And that's because those positions have the longer probationary period.
They have more defined, they have more defined checkpoints throughout their first year.
Okay.
Yes. And promotional periods.
As soon as Cindy comes back, I hear her drying her hands in that infamous dryer in there that's so loud. And we can probably get teed up for the next one while we're waiting, which is in performance, which is, I believe, is probably right after this.
Nope. Nepotism's right after it.
Okay, so employee performance. Oh, I'm sorry, my apologies.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah, my apologies, drug and alcohol is next, according to this agenda. Okay, so, Sydney, just to bring you up, the only changes that we're recommending to what we've been provided is where it says public service, that will change to safety to match the definitional section of the document. Okay. I will make a motion to move these changes to a hearing. Can I get a second?
Second.
Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to discuss just real quick, and since it looks like Jeremy needed to take a break too, on timing. I have a hard stop at noon. So we want to take time to discuss our next meeting at some point. So we're going to leave some time for that. We also have one item under new business, which is extremely easy to tell you that this was 2012 was the last time this was in effect. So it would be something we could move to hearing very quickly. I think that the drug and alcohol policy are going to take a substantial amount of discussion. Nepotism, I think, is going to take discussion time, maybe not as much. So I would ask, one, from your position, would you like us to potentially take the agenda out of order to get that new business item, so we can get that moved and gone onto hearing, and then come back to drug and alcohol?
That's fine by me.
Okay.
Sure.
So I am going to make a motion to take the agenda out of order so that we can address the new business item, which is a very simplistic item to address. Do I have a second?
I second that.
Okay. All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay. So the section that we're referring to under the new business is a section that part of the policy has not been in effect for 12 years, something like that. It's just never really gotten cleaned up. It's just that one whole red section.
Page 45 of 73.
Thank you. And I'm not even going to look for it because I know what it looks like. It's just all red. And it's a policy that hasn't been in effect forever. So I am going to make a motion to move for the removal of that section to a hearing.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
Can you explain a little bit about it?
I can.
It happened so far ahead of her
Yeah.
time here and my
Oh,
time here
okay.
This is something that should have been cleaned up.
I'm trying to find it so I can.
Just talks about special circumstances.
It was a special circumstance regarding a leave program that was enacted in policy, and it was sunset a while back. And because of that, it was removed from the policy, but never fully removed from the policy for council to take out of said policy. And because of that, it's just been redlined for 12 years.
Oh, my.
Yeah, so it's just a.
So it needs to go.
Really,
Yes,
truly
so
a
it needs
clean
to go.
And we can look through it if you like. It's.
I was just trying to understand. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, you're fine. It's a situation where, in years past, we didn't always look at the red line copy. We would look at just the copy without the marked up changes. So we didn't see it for a long time because it was like, well, it's been crossed out, but it wasn't formally taken out through a public hearing and approval by the council. So regardless of what we think of it, there's nothing to add back in.
Right.
It's just
I
done.
have no problem with
Yeah,
it.
Yeah,
been done for
it's a
12 years.
sunset policy that doesn't
Doesn't apply.
apply.
Okay. So, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of moving this to a hearing to be taken up by council, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, very good, motion passes. All right. Now I'm going to ask, since we are out of order, would you like us to take up nepotism, or would you like us to take up drug and alcohol? I don't think we're gonna get through both.
I would try, mine would be nepotism, because I think we probably need to have some time for that other one.
Yeah, the other one has got more questions than I can even think of. So
That's
let's,
fine by me.
okay, so let's address nepotism. So everybody get to that page. Someone can holler it out. Oh, it's actually right after that. No, it's not, because I'm on a different page.
13 of 73.
Say it again?
13 of 73.
You know what your job's going to be moving forward.
Exactly. Well, and we probably need to work on like everybody working off of the same full copy.
I only printed the red lined pages.
Oh, good for you.
Oh, look at you.
And I'm trying to find it in the old, in my old, because I didn't transfer over all my changes because I didn't want to rewrite everything. Oh, here it is. Okay. Okay, we had discussion about this again at the previous meeting, and I'll bring up some of the things that, well, I apologize. Let me back up one more time. This policy used to previously said that it was an issue of direct supervision. Nepotism applied to direct supervision. Then there was discussion that the phrase direct would come out, okay? So it would be supervision. We have the word direct back in here now. Let me kind of explain why, where it was, where it changed, and where we're back to. So we have concerns, in particular I know of the fire department because I know a lot of people in the fire department. We have people who are father-son, who are husband-wife, father-daughter, like whatever. I don't want to make all the combinations, but you understand what I'm saying. If we said that, if we took out the word direct, just as it would apply to the fire service, if someone was, working on B shift as a firefighter, which is your lowest firefighter level employee, and their father was battalion chief supervises a shift, then those people,
Scheduling nightmare.
well, it's a scheduling issue, but it's a question of, we want to ensure that because we have somewhere between, I want to say probably 10, 15 situations in the department, just the fire, because I just know some of those people, where if we took out that word direct, we would have to let go half of those people. So we have a battalion chief who's the father of an operator, fire operator, apparatus operator. If we don't have that word direct in there, then that's basically the entire chain of command that could become an issue of. So because a battalion chief could end up, if he works on B, his son works on C, he could end up taking a shift over on C. Now, we're gonna talk a little bit more about that, but we don't want to discourage employment of relatives, but we don't want them supervising each other directly unless there's a case of an emergency. Case of emergency might be, we have a tornado and we need all boots on the ground and a relative is gonna have to come out and supervise. Or we have a, God forbid, a shooting and we have a change in, at shift change time. So current person handling that is gonna be replaced by the next person who's coming in. That person has to go. Now you've got a situation, okay? Those are emergencies, and we're gonna try not to ever have those types of situations where someone is supervised directly. But we need that directly because otherwise you will have people within the entire chain of a department who will not be able to work in that department.
Well,
Go- yes.
from an HR perspective, and I've spoken at length with the coalition
Uh-huh.
as well as leadership on this.
Uh-huh.
So they're aware of my stance here.
Okay, sure.
The concern I have is the further up the administrative chain individuals go, the more authority they have on policy, procedures, wages, things like that.
Okay.
Emergency situations, 100% yes. Safety is a concern in those emergency situations. You do not want family members in those situations at all. So that is a major concern, yes.
But it
From
could
the
be
min-
that we have to handle the emergency. We'll document and to discuss later why we could not get a relative out of the position.
We could document that, yes.
Yeah, because we have that provision in there, right?
But on a broader scale,
Okay.
from an administrative situation, the higher up one goes,
Right?
the more authority they have over policy, procedures, administration. That is a downstream effect on the entire organization.
Right.
And that is an effect on anyone within that organization or department. And that is a problem, regardless of who that person directly reports to on an upstream scale. I'll use again myself as an example. My son, who's 16, and I use this as an example in the coalition meeting, had said to me, I want to work in the Parks Department this summer mowing lawns. And I said, absolutely not. And he said, why? And I said, because I'm the HR director. And he said, but you don't mow the lawns and you don't run the Parks Department. And I said, yes, but I hire and I fire and I create the wages and I create the policies and I do all of the things that will affect your job. And that in no way will reflect well on you as an employee in the Parks Department. That is absolutely not going to happen. That is a nepotism violation, and it is not going to happen because, sorry, buddy, but that's just the role I have in the organization. It is not okay. That just doesn't sit well. And how would you like that every single day to be said to you, Mommy got you this job? It's the way that nepotism works in an organization. And the higher up somebody is, and the way that downstreams, the way that those policies affect, regardless if they make those decisions or not, that is why nepotism policies are put in place. And I understand it is certainly not going to sit well, but if these intentions are clear before these people are put in place, then the people are taken out of context and that policy is in place, and then that doesn't even have to be a thing. We have to make sure that the policy is put there, not the people, and we're working the policy around the people. It is certainly for the benefit of the organization, not the benefit of the people. That is the goal here. And that's what we have to remember when we're working through these nepotism policies. We are a big enough organization that we can put the right people in play, and we can work through these situations where we can still have individuals who are related in this organization, and we can figure that out. But once they get to a certain point in administration in these departments, it's going to be an issue, and they cannot work in the organization anymore. And again, I've made this very clear to everybody of the why. It just gets too muddy. So that's my piece. That's the why. And I'll let you discuss.
Okay, so I'm gonna give an example and tell me, because like, make sure I'm understanding what you're saying and how what I'm wondering about fits with what you're saying.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay, so like I said, right now we have I think he's an FAO firefighter who is, obviously a firefighter, works for fire department on, I'm just gonna throw out B shift. His father works on, I'm gonna throw it out, A shift.
Okay.
Is this policy written such that neither of those two people has to leave?
I don't know what the positions are, so I can't.
Battalion chief and a firefighter, fire operator, apparatus operator, captain.
That's pretty acceptable on my,
That's okay, that doesn't violate
so
the
long
nepotism.
as they're not working on that same shift, I'm comfortable with that. And as long as we have that safety policy in place, I'm comfortable. They're not approving time for individuals and all those things. If we go up the rank any further to assistant, we're gonna have an issue in some form or fashion, because then they have that authority. It just depends on
Like,
how
right,
that
right.
authority oversees. And I can't get into the specifics because I'm not sure how that all works over in the fire.
Well, I can throw out another example of what you're saying. Like, for instance, the deputy chief.
Uh-huh, that's a problem.
Deputy chief can, makes big time decisions
Yep.
in the fire department. So you're
Yep.
saying, in this case, our current deputy chief, none of his relatives buy any of these.
In my opinion, the answer is no.
Okay, and that's the way you, okay, so let me stick there. Okay, so that's your intention.
That's
okay?
my opinion,
Opinion,
simply
right.
because of the policy decisions that have to be made.
And in the past, that has been allowed. That's absolute exact situation happened. I'm not
Okay.
saying that's right or wrong. That's
Okay.
in the past, and this is where we're going, okay? Deputy chief, his son was on a shift.
Okay,
So the way that was allowed was because it said not direct supervision.
understood.
So then I will say, based on, and I know we're picking on the fire department, but there's other,
That's okay, they're in the
some-
room, they
yeah,
understand.
yeah. And some other situations are a little more straightforward. Like, if you work for the water department, you
Sure.
don't work on this shift and that shift and move up into a different classification
Sure.
and things.
Uh-huh.
This is a little more convoluted. So with that comment in mind, which I understand, I don't see that written in here.
Mm-hmm.
And if we're gonna say, okay, so like the situation with the battalion chief who works on A, son works on C, and we're gonna absolutely do everything we can. Like, you're not gonna work under your father on overtime, you're not gonna switch to that shift. If an emergency happens, that's a whole nother deal. Like, emergencies are emergencies. That's okay. But then if that same firefighter's father was the assistant chief of EMS. And I'm only throwing this out, I know the structure, so then is that where it becomes an issue? Now, assistant chiefs of EMS don't make decisions on, they could recommend somebody be fired, but that's not gonna be handled at their level, that's gonna,
Yeah, they're not in their direct chain of command.
right. According to the org chart, they're in there, right?
No, they're not.
So you have fire operations.
They're
So
not
what-
in that chain of command.
So you've got the chief of the department, who's
Mhm.
obviously over everything. The deputy chief, who's over everything.
They're not in that chain of command.
What am I missing?
I'm sorry, I was reading something. in the-
Emergency management is not under, we have a chief of emergency management now.
I'm not even talking about emergency management. I'm talking
Oh,
about
I
just the
thought you
fire
said
department.
EMS, my apologies.
No, okay, so let me explain. So we have a fire chief.
Yeah.
And then we have a deputy chief.
Yes,
Then we have 3 assistant chiefs who are, correct me if I'm wrong, one's fire marshal's department, 4 fire marshal's department, training, EMS,
Services.
services, okay? They're in the chain, that's the next layer. Then down from that, you have battalion chiefs. Some serve in the field on shifts. Another battalion chief serves under one of the assistant chiefs in services. So if I look at an org chart of the fire department, chief, deputy chief, 4 assistant chiefs, multiple battalion chiefs, then captains, operators, firefighters. I haven't missed anybody. So like when you look at the org chart, that's the whole thing.
Okay,
So when EMS, the confusion there is EMS versus EOC.
okay,
Chief Morris is in charge of the EOC. She's not a chief of EMS.
okay,
So that's a little confusion. And that position is under the city manager. That is not she.
okay, understood.
Because she's a chief, you know, that chief is not in the fire department. So I'm not
Okay,
addressing that piece, but I understand the confusion. So, the assistant chief of EMS handles things like EMS training, looking at equipment, what should we have, what should we bring on, what should we, you know, what SOP should we put in place for treating EMS? So my question is, at what level, when you look at those levels, again, just saying on the fire department, at what level is too high that you can't have anybody below working for you that you're related to?
in that particular circumstance, I would assume it would be probably, depending on where that person sits, deputy, in that particular hierarchy structure.
Okay, so I think that we need to, we're going to have to define these things in here further. Because we can't just say,
And my concern doing that, pardon me for interrupting.
no, you're fine.
Is organization charts change consistently? If we were to define that in policy, we did consistently have to change our policy. So I agree that we would have to define that somehow in this a little better if that's your concern, but we'd have to do it in a way that overrides organizational structure change. Because otherwise we'd be back here pretty often.
Yeah, I guess I don't know how often, I mean, I know the battalion chiefs changed things a little bit, but I think everything's pretty much stayed like in the fire department has been, those are the structures, but it could change.
We have several departments, right? So they change
Right.
consistently.
Right.
So I want to ask this question, because I don't know, and since you're bringing up the example of the fire department, and maybe we'll ask the gentleman in the back, isn't that kind of what firefighters do? They hire, or I shouldn't say hire, that's a bad word, but don't they have family members that kind of follow in their footsteps?
Yeah.
And they like to all work like, I'm in Independence, I want you to work in Independence with me, or I'm from another area and I want you. Isn't that kind of what it is, kind of a brotherhood, if you would?
Yes, I would say, like for an example, you know, take NYFD, New York City Fire. If that family tree is anything other than this, you know what I mean? I would be shocked.
But also, that's a very, very big department, right? Where
I was just trying to clarify, you know, why, I should say, that's going to be an issue. It will be an issue because
It's
you're
kind of
having,
a legacy thing is what we call it.
Correct.
Yeah. It's family legacy. My dad was a firefighter, my grandpa, my whatever's, you know. Whatever. And my concern is, obviously, I understand nepotism, and I don't want to get into a situation where somebody's, you know, received favoritism or has been not favored inappropriately too, you know, type thing. I totally understand the concept of it, but we have to lay it out such that it is very clear because I will throw out another current situation, which we're not trying to address everybody's individual situation. We have a current situation where our deputy fire chief's daughter works in dispatch. If dispatch right now is under PD, if dispatch gets moved under fire, then one of the two would have to go. If you're going to say the deputy chief is making, you know, your chief and your deputy chief are making big decisions.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I'm not saying that we're trying to protect individuals or that we're trying, you know, but I'm just throwing out the things that are concerned.
Mhm.
And I don't want us to become so, we want to protect ourselves, but we want to not get so tight that we have to let people go. because we already have extreme hiring issues in the city. I mean, we address that, at every council meeting. You know what I mean? So I don't want us to unduly end up having to let people go because they can't find a place within their department to work. Now, if it's deputy chief's daughter who wants to come to work for the fire department, I would understand why we would say that. But we need to define at what level it becomes a downstream issue. Am I making sense?
Yes, you make sense.
Except you haven't proposed a particular level.
Yeah, so I'm going to share my thoughts, okay? My background, I've done HR for longer than I care to tell you, and I've worked for small businesses, so guess what? They've hired their relatives, their family. I've also worked for a large, like a Fortune 50 company where they hired their relatives. So it can be really good and it can be really bad. But I don't know that you can just come out and say, like draw a line in the sand, because we have firefighters, which this is happening. But I think maybe a better solution would be, and Jamie, I'm right with you. Like with my children, I would never hire them. And it's just, I think more so it's our position, because somebody might be scared to say something to them if they were messing up or what have you. But if you want to put it in writing, we're going to have to really think hard before we do that, because that is drawing the line in the sand. But also, I think part of it could be the education of our higher-ups. In other words, it's a fast policy. I don't know how you do it behind all of this, but like, okay, your daughter is now here. Understand. We know this. You have to, you have to dot your I's and cross your T's. Does that make sense? So it's kind of like behind the scenes kind of a thing that has to happen with training and understanding. I'm not so sure how you put all that in this, but I think you're cutting yourself off at the knees if we say no nepotism.
Right, and that's why what we tried to do here with the verbiage under 3 is supervision by relatives, as we said, that the employee can't supervise directly, right? And then where we talked about pre-approved practices, investigations, tried to be a little more vague, but also talking about policy, things like that, so that we're not pigeonholing ourselves, taking into account all of the things we've been talking about today.
Okay, so I think we've made some good points of things that we're going to need to discuss further. Obviously, we're not going to get this to moving it to a hearing, so given that it's 10-tail, I think we need to think about some of those things. I want to throw out a couple of other things that I had brought up in the previous meeting too, about and I believe they're still in the current one, we say under definition of relative, we talk about by blood, and then we talk about consanguinity, and I don't know if I'm ever saying that right, sanguinity.
Consanguinity.
Say it again.
Consanguinity.
Consanguinity.
Yeah.
Sanguine
It means by
means,
blood.
yeah.
And affinity.
Sanguinity, sang means
Yeah,
blood. Yep,
correct.
in Latin.
And affinity is by marriage.
Yeah. So we have affinity by blood, by law, by marriage, consanguinity. I'm not saying it right. I still think personal relationship, and then relative. So I don't understand why we have the con word and by blood. To me, those are the same things. So I want us to just think about that. Again, we're not gonna make complete decisions right here, because we're gonna have to close up this meeting and decide on our next one. I mentioned that before. I am not sure why we need this table. I thank God it's cleaned up from where it was, which was like, you had to read 13 pages of things going this direction and that direction. But I don't understand why we need that. We don't need to know under table of consanguinity and affinity, we don't need to know what degree it is. It doesn't matter. It says if you are related by blood or affinity, then this nepotism policy is gonna come into question. So I don't know why we need all of that. And when we talk about affinity, which would be like by marriage, why do we need affinity and by marriage? And we don't include, under the infinity stuff, we don't include spouses. So there's stuff that's repeated, duplicative, and I'm not sure is necessary. That does not go to the heart of this. It just goes to the cleanup of this a little bit. So I would just like to ask that we kind of think about that going forward. Okay? At this point, given our time, I am going to make a motion that we table, might say this wrong, Jeremy, table this for discussion,
It's postponed.
I knew
Yeah.
it's always one.
Table is within the meeting, postpone is to
Just-
a different meeting.
Thank you. So we will postpone this until our next meeting, further discussion on this. And then, of course, also postpone for further discussion, the drug and alcohol policy, which we did not get to. So I've made that, and we do need to vote on that, correct? I make a motion to postpone those two items to a future meeting.
I mean, that would be the cleanest way to do
Okay,
it.
great.
I mean, since you're not gonna be able to talk about them today.
Okay, so can I get a second on that?
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
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 All right, we need to look at next meeting dates, so if everyone could please pull out their calendar. It looks as though we have a few items here that we've approved to go to a hearing, so we need to schedule a hearing, and I will turn to you guys. Again, this requires 10 days' notice. They will have to, of course, have time to make the changes that we've talked about, if any. So what time frame would you guys like us to consider for the hearing?
And just for timing's sake, in terms of the 10 days, we could do as early as the 31st of May.
I am available on the 31st at 10 a.m. Are the rest of you?
I am not.
Can you explain what that means?
Yes. So, so we discuss things in, that's okay, it's totally fine. We discuss things in meetings. Then a hearing means notification is given to everyone in the department, retirees, current employees, us, everybody, so that they have 10 days to read what we are going to be voting on at the hearing to either recommend or not recommend to the city council. So we can have one meeting where we handle the hearings, which these items, as I look at them, will go pretty quickly. Sometimes it, like when we go to a hearing for nepotism, it might take longer. These should be pretty quick. So we can also, if we have time, if we want to, we can say on the day we pick, whatever time, 10 to noon, we might want to keep on the agenda below the hearing items, some like the nepotism. And so if we have time, we can discuss that. Each item will be opened. So I will open a hearing for item number 1. We'll discuss it, ask for comment, vote, close the hearing, on each of those items. Then we can have we can have old business section for these two in case we have time. But we have to settle on a date.
I'm also available on the 30th of May, if that's acceptable
30th,
to
I
the
am
group.
completely out on the 30th. I'm also not good for May 29th. I would prefer that we move to the first week in June. As in, I assume you probably don't want to do Mondays because Mondays are a little crazy when you have council meeting on Monday nights. Yay or nay?
I mean, it's up to you all
Yeah.
when you meet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As far as myself or whoever the attorney is, will adjust accordingly, so.
Okay. I just want to make it convenient for you. I don't want you to be like, okay, on Mondays, we've got to get,
Yeah.
and especially now with your assist, your interim position, you got a lot going.
Thank you. I'm available that afternoon,
Monday,
if
the 3rd?
possible. Mhm.
I'm on my way back from Atlanta.
Okay,
Okay.
so Monday the 3rd is not for you. For-
The entire next week, the 10th through the 14th, I could do any day.
I can do June 10th. I can do that for sure. Let's go around the room on June 10th. Yes? No? 14th is actually our next. Why would I have that on Thursday instead of Friday? Okay,
Yes.
okay, but yeah, I could,
I'm afraid I'm busy that day. Is the 11th possible to anyone that morning?
11, I can do the afternoon, I cannot do the morning.
Or the 13th I have?
I can do the 13th.
13th, I'm wide open.
I'm wide open, but you're not, he's not available.
Okay. Okay, so now we have to make the decision. Obviously, we have to have you, period. And we have to have a quorum of us. And Kendra's not here, just as FYI for the new people, she was not able to make this meeting. So now we
We
either-
said not the morning of the 11th. Was the afternoon of the 11th optional?
He can't do the afternoon.
No.
Okay.
I'm unavailable that afternoon, my apologies.
So we now have to make a decision whether we have to comply with what their availability is, because they have to be here.
I can do the morning of the 12th. I could do the 12th. I can move things around that day of the 12th if necessary.
I'm okay with the 12th.
No.
Are you out that entire week?
I'm out every week except on Fridays.
Okay, so
So what about the 14th and what about the 4th? Oh, she's out.
I can, if we move it earlier in the day,
yeah, I can do earlier. I always block out, as I would ask everyone to, especially as we now are really into things again, we're getting active here. Please block out the 3rd, or the Fridays, is it the 3rd? So that we have this on, so you have it on your calendar, so that you know going forward, that we're going to try to meet on these days. But, okay, so we need to stick with a Friday. So Friday, June 14th at 8 a.m.,
Anytime on Friday.
okay?
I couldn't do 8, but I could do like 9 or 9:30. What?
Okay, no, it's okay, because she's just,
Oh.
okay.
I'm
So
so
let me ask
sorry.
this-
I'm
okay.
trying.
No. So if we did 9, because that works for all of us,
We could just do the hearings?
just do the hearing.
Sure, that'll work.
Okay. So if someone on your staff could please send that out today so we can get that on everybody's calendars, 100%, block that out. 9 o'clock, June 14th. Yep, I'm gonna put it on my calendar right now. Personnel hearing. Okay, now, we still have 2 policies to discuss, so we need a next meeting to discuss nepotism and alcohol, drug.
I'm wide open that following Friday.
The 21st, you're wide open?
Yes, ma'am.
21st.
It's a Friday.
Friday. I am wide open on June 21st.
I can move something. It's completely optional.
Every
I-
Friday.
It's a Friday, yeah. I will try really hard.
Okay. Because we've exhausted all the Fridays before, right? I'm so lost now. Now that we know we need to stick with Fridays, we've exhausted all the other Fridays, right? Okay. Thank you
I mean,
for some.
if we're not going to talk about the hearings next Friday, I'm available.
Friday?
Okay, what Friday?
Next Friday, I'm available.
Okay, so let's start back from there. Okay, so Friday the
24th.
Friday the 24th. In?
Every Friday.
I can do that.
I can do that.
Okay.
But you got to make it a little bit later, like, is 11 too late for everybody?
I can do 11.
What would be the end time?
Uh,
After 12 o'clock on Fridays.
11, if we move it back, I'd like to have 2 hours. I'd like to do 11 to 1.
You have to be done by 12.
Yeah, I'm done at 12.
Okay, then we'll do 11 to 12, going once, going twice on Friday,
The 24th.
the 24th. Agreed?
Yep.
Which means,
I have people on vacation, so I just,
which just means too, that we're gonna have to have any updated documents to us and ready with the agenda by next Tuesday for our next Friday meeting. Okay. Okay, so Personnel Board,
Correct me if I'm wrong, are we just talking about the documents we already have for the two issues, nepotism and
Yes,
substance abuse?
that's correct.
Okay.
I was gonna say, I'm fine with the documents I have, if it's just nepotism and alcohol.
okay, so what we will do on that front is, I don't know if you're going to consider any changes to the I mean, we haven't even gotten to alcohol, so we're not even at that policy. Is there anything that we discussed today you would make changes on before we have another discussion?
I wasn't going to, no,
Okay.
but I'll have the agenda out.
Okay,
just so everybody
good.
knows what that
Very
is.
good. And I really appreciate now that the city is doing this where the agenda and all supporting documentation is out there on the website so that anybody can see it. That is
course.
a great improvement, so appreciated. All right, if there is nothing else to come before the board, I will make a motion to adjourn.
I second that.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thanks all.